We are at the Imp and the Ogre. I'm Paul.
This is Ryan.
Today we're taking a look at the Beast of Burden.
Bum, bum, bum. Yeah, Beast of Burden. So this is another adventure out of a dungeon magazine. This one comes from Dungeon 100. It's a third edition, or third and a half edition, whichever adventure. Originally published in 2003, designed for 6th level PCs, but probably could be run anywhere from, say, 4th level to 8th level.
Mm-hmm.
And if you wanted to pick yourself up a copy, the dungeon magazines can all be bought, at least the PDFs. Some of them still have hard copies, but you can buy them all at the Paizo website. So Paizo.com, if you're not familiar with them, they're the Pathfinder people. Just Google it. You can buy all these great old dungeon magazines from them. So Beast of Burden, what is it about?
The Cadtanak.
Catanak? The cataracts?
The cataracts. You're effectively trying to mount a massive extraplanar beast and stop its rampage from destroying the rest of civilization.
Well, that seems a touch overly dramatic. I don't know the rest of civilization, but yeah. So, giant extraplanar creature. The dungeon is on its back.
Awesome.
Super cool. General impressions?
I think it's a great adventure. Really neat and creative. Kind of outside of the box of what standard adventuring is, and would be a ton of fun as a player and a DM to run. Methinks.
I agree. I think it's one of the more interesting premises that we've come across, that I've ever come across, even outside of doing this program. It's neat. It's structured in a very unusual way. Even the dungeon design itself, because it's got all these howdas. All of these structures on its back, which are not super well connected. Mm-hmm. So moving between them can be a bit of a pain. Also, what I really like about the adventure is that it is pretty plug and play. Like, it's not tied really to any particular location or time. The PCs literally stumble across it as they're moving from point A to point B. So you could use this in almost any type of campaign. Now, I think it works best if you're doing more of a wilderness-y type part of your campaign. Like, it definitely works better in a more rural environment.
Yeah.
Right? Obviously, if you're dropping this down in, like, if they're rampaging around Waterdeep, they don't really need you to deal with this, right? There's more impressive NPCs to deal with it. So you kind of want to be using this more in an area that's rural, far from anywhere, with lots of blah blah blahs, reinforcements. So you kind of want to be like the go-to helpers, I guess. Like, there can't be bigger embedders nearby. And for whatever reason, I don't even know if it's explicitly in there, I got kind of like a plainsy, savanna-y feel to this. Like, it's a big, you need plains, you need open space for this to work. So rolling farmland, I guess, could also work, but I don't think it's not rampaging through a jungle or through, like, a boreal forest. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like it's
that's true.
It definitely, you need space to get to it from a mobility standpoint. So in your Great Plains of your equivalent campaign, I think it could work. I think it could work just fine in, like, a desert style campaign, right? This could easily be a desert creature as well. I mean, it's extra planar, so do what you will with it. Yeah. But it's more of an arid environment beast. I don't know why I'm talking about, biomes, but that's just sort of how I felt. Like, I think it kind of needs that. You need space. Like, you run into knights that we'll talk about shortly. They had horses, so you're obviously not charging through.
Yeah. You're right. Yeah, I didn't really give much thought to, like, where it was.
I give thought to all kinds of different things, and that's part of my charm, I guess. I don't know, for lack of a better word. Okay, so cool. very fun.
Yep.
So how, as designed, do the players encounter the adventure?
They come across a ruined settlement. Refugees? Yeah, or that were displaced from Svez.
I literally didn't even write down the name of
rest.
Of the town. I think they're supposed to be refugees from the town that you're on your way to.
Yeah, you're going through this town. So you're right. You run to the refugees. They tell you they've come from this place and this thing destroyed their city. And that's pretty much all the information that you really get at that point.
The thing is, this is a great role-playing situation because, as it even says it in the adventure, like the refugees have no idea what it is. So some of them are like, it's the Tarrasque! We were attacked by the Tarrasque! Right? So you could kind of just use this as a huge red herring to get your players a little like, what?
The what now?
No, you wouldn't know. We're like level 5. There's no way we're fighting the Tarrasque. We'll be like, are you serious? Like, yeah, it was the Tarrasque. It just came, and then there was these creatures that came off of its back and attacked us, and blah, 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 blah,
destroyed our town.
Exactly. It was horrible. Another thing that I think is important to play up here is the refugees, a lot of them are injured. Mm-hmm. They don't have much food.
Yep.
Right?
You have the opportunity to help them.
They have the opportunity to help them, but I would probably be a little cruel in this. If you have a cleric that heals one refugee, they're going to be mobbed by all the refugees for healing, right? Like I think the refugees should be demanding, because it makes sense, right? You have magical healing powers, quick, come over here. My grandma's got a crushed leg or whatever. Like you could definitely push it, and eventually you're going to run out of magic, or you're just going to be like, no. Which then puts you in an interesting situation. So I just like that all the information that you get can and should be completely unreliable.
Yeah.
Right?
It was 1,000 feet tall and had 24 legs.
Its spawn washed over us like in a tide of blood, right? You can super hyperbole, lots of exaggeration. I definitely play that up to give your players really no firm footing in what they're
looking for.
What they should be expecting. Okay. Now, one thing I did kind of consider here is I was wondering if it would make sense to maybe have the refugees attacked by something, like while the PCs are there.
Right.
And as we'll learn, there's a lot of gnolls involved with this. So I was even thinking maybe it was a gnoll raiding party, especially if we're talking like using gnolls as described in Volo, which are like hardcore cannibals, if you chasing down the wounded to eat. I could definitely see, based off of the enemies that you're dealing with, like why would they let the refugees get away? Like,
or you run into bugbears, maybe they're raiding the refugees.
Bugbears, or even just like animals. Like there's a bunch of injured people. Maybe if you're in the savannah, maybe you got some hyenas after you, which once again would kind of fit with the gnoll theme, or lions, or wolves. I just kind of I don't know if it's necessary, but you have a bunch of wounded people in the wilderness. I think it would be kind of interesting to sort of illustrate how dangerous it is.
Right.
Right. You could even have undead, right? You could have them camping and like ghouls have caught the scent of blood and are on the back trail. Like, I don't know that it necessarily needs to be a complicated or difficult encounter. But what I did think would be interesting if you included that is now you've set the stage where the refugees won't want the PCs to leave because there's all these dangers out there and they need to protect us, and they could even be more demanding. Sure. All of which goes away when the night patrol shows up.
Yeah. Right.
Like this isn't a long-term problem, right? Because you can easily just have those knights, as we'll talk about in a second here, show up, and then they'll guard the refugees and blah 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 blah. But I think it gives you kind of an interesting role play situation where the players get to see maybe the dark side of being the hero, where they can see people not at their best and being super demanding and putting them in a difficult situation. Especially, I mean, if you have a bunch of players that are all just like on the evil spectrum, they might just murder all the refugees and steal their stuff, right? Like, but if you have players that are ostensibly good-ish, it puts them in kind of a moral quandary. Now, this might be a big deal, this might be a small deal. It really depends on how you've set up this part of the adventure for where your PCs are going, right? Is there a timeline? Are they trying to get somewhere importantly? If they can just be like, yeah, sure, we'll take 2 weeks and we'll take you to whatever, like that's less of an issue. But I think it is kind of an interesting role play situation and a problem that you can give your players that isn't combat based, right? Like it's a moral quandary more than anything else.
Yeah, I guess you'd have to be a little bit careful with that in this adventure, though, because you are on a timeline.
You don't know you're on a timeline yet.
The knights tell you.
They don't, not until the knights get there, right? Like what I'm saying is this all happens before the knights show up.
But I mean, I guess that's still a tough position to be put in, because how much time does it take for the knights to get there then?
Oh, I would just totally have them show up as soon as it's resolved, right? Like I would use them as our Deus Ex Machina. Like literally at any point where things are either going to reach a head, right? Like your players are about to murder a bunch of refugees, or they've agreed to take them, or right? You can bring it in wherever you want, right? Like you can say like, okay, yeah, we're going to take you to the nearby settlement, and then, a couple hours later, you're met by the knights that intersect with it. Like they're going to the same place, right? Like you can build it in that way. But as is, I didn't really like how it's set up, that like you have this brief interaction with the refugees and then the knights are there and then you don't care about the refugees anymore, right? So I think having more of an interaction there can maybe sort of test the mettle of your
maybe you could start
players.
The campaign where you are a refugee.
Yeah, but I don't know that the knights would recruit you to help. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I do think that the players should be going to this town, and I think they should be going to meet somebody in this town, because this will tie into the talking to the knights. I don't know if your players are necessarily going to be motivated enough to do this out of the kindness of their hearts. Regardless of how this goes, as written, while you're talking to the refugees, but my suggestion would be after you've resolved some of the stuff with the refugees, you hear the thunder of hooves. Once again, I'd probably have the refugees start to panic because, we find out later, the gnolls have horses and patrolling as well. But a bruised and battered battalion, remnants of a battalion of knights roll up.
With a stone form of their captain or whoever it was.
Yeah. So this is where you get more.
I guess there really is no incentive for the players to do this.
Oh, none. Other than they're
just
good
like
people.
Do it. Yeah.
Which is why I think you need to have a prisoner. There should be a rescue mission, and it's totally workable. Like they even suggest it in the campaign, because one of the parts of the dungeon is a prisoner room where they suggest it. So I think you should build that in there for extra incentive, because there's no money. It's like the knights aren't offering them cash.
No,
right? So if there's not money, then they need to have another reason to rescue somebody.
We failed. Can you please try and succeed?
That's literally what happens, right? Like a group of knights shows up and says like, "Oh yeah, we couldn't defeat this, but like you 3 to 6 randos should be able to do this," which actually might give more reason to have your refugees attacked. Because if they're attacked by, say, like a manticore or something like that, something like legitimately dangerous, if the knights come upon your party shortly thereafter, then you have proof of your prowess.
Yeah.
So that's true. That's one way you could go about it. The other way you could go about it is the PCs at this point might have some local notoriety already.
Maybe.
Right? Because they could be as high as level 6.
Yep.
One would hope that through levels 1 through 5, you've done something of note. If you've done something of note locally, then maybe these knights are aware of,
who you might be.
who,
Sure.
the
Yeah, that makes sense.
if you are a party, right? I mean, might be the company of the Golden Hand or something like that, or you could be like, Steve the Halfling and his buddies. Like, it really depends on your party, but there's
Steve the Halfling and his buddies.
yeah, that might be my next adventuring crew, right? Steve the Halfling.
What do you guys call yourselves? Steve the Halfling and his buddies.
No, there's no halfling in the party. It's a name. It's a work in progress. So they show up, and then you find out more about you learn that this is some giant monster creature, that it's not the Terrask, which is part of the reason why I think you should have this delay, because I don't think it's as fun if your players are like, oh my god, it's the Terrask, and like literally the next thing that someone tells you is like, oh no, it's not the Terrask. I like a little bit of
suspense.
Well, there should be a little bit of time where your players are actively trying to think about how they would stop the Terrask before they find out they don't have to stop the Terrask.
Right.
It seems more fun that way.
Yeah.
Your own mileage may vary. But they tell you that, they can describe it. They can talk about that it's got these these howdas on its back, and that there's gnolls defending it, and there's gnoll patrols. And they can talk about the defenses that it has, right? So that they, tried to stop it, and they got it shot by like ballista and arrows, and there's a petrification ray gun and all of this. Well, they don't know what's in there, right? Like, they just know that, they charged up and a bunch of people got turned to stone. So
true.
So there's all kinds of crazy defenses. Spider webs got shot out of one basket, and all of this weird craziness.
Like near impossible to get on top of this thing.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, we'll get to that. But it's they attack, they lose, and then as written, they ask the players to stop it. Right.
Yeah.
They say like, we think it's moving on to the next settlement, which is blah blah blah. Like literally, the names of the towns don't matter. Make them whatever you want them to be.
It's going to some big city that it's gonna go stomp on,
just like it stomped the last one.
Yeah.
So you need to stop it before you defend. It does it. Blah blah blah, and then they leave. Like literally, that's the lead up to it. It's like you, as players, out of the goodness of your hearts, should stop this thing that just destroyed a patrol of armed knights.
Yep.
Which I don't know about you, but I've definitely had players have been like, no.
Yeah, we're good.
It doesn't really seem like anything. Granted, there'll be players who'll be like, yeah, that's awesome, let's go stop it. But there's no monetary reward from the knights. I mean, obviously, if you're just trying to build reputation, then sure, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
But this is why I think that the players should get an inkling that maybe prisoners were being taken. And I think the town that just got raided, they should have been going to meet somebody.
Yeah.
Maybe there was a sage, maybe there's blah blah blah, maybe there's somebody that owes them money. Like, it doesn't really matter
for sure. Yeah.
But I think that's added incentive. Also, it would give them incentive to investigate the town itself. Right, the one that got destroyed.
Yeah.
Which is a location that they can, but once again, it's not required. Right? That's where the bugbears are. So I think that's an option. Also, I mean, the knights, they could ask for money. I guess like you could ask the knights for money. Like, I'm trying to think of what would get my players motivated, and it's usually,
you could add in like a reward from I can't remember how big the city is supposed to be that it's going to destroy, but
I mean, like, you can't get the money beforehand. Like, are you going to shake it down? Be like, we rescued you, like, or are we going to like release it again? Then
you could at the end. I mean, you could get that helmet, put it on, go stand outside the place, and be like, if you don't, so basically, we're coming in if you don't pay us.
We're replacing one evil guy for the party. Then the party goes around and starts extorting money from town.
Because come on, like, as if you're not going to stick on that friggin' helm of domination later on and take this thing for a test drive.
Either you die a hero or you live long enough to become the villain. So that's
all
within one adventure. Your party,
Yes.
yes, there you go. Your players
Yes.
will be villains by level 7.
Well, I mean, we want to get paid.
They're gonna get paid.
We want to get paid.
So, anyways, regardless of how you structure it, you're gonna want to. You might need some incentive.
Sure.
You know your players better than anybody else, and if they're all just like, "Yeah, let's do the right thing and save the town,"
Huzzah.
all those happy-go-lucky halflings or whatever, then yeah, go for it. But there is no real incentive.
No, there's not. Anyway.
At all. So unless you want your players to be like, nah, that's okay, we're just going to keep going, which I guess is fine. Like this isn't the type of adventure like you literally do not have to force on your players. They should just come back and like have everything destroyed for miles around.
Yeah, world-changing events.
But it's absolutely not required stopping. Like it's not like world-ending events though, right? Like it's the whole thing is like if you don't stop this, what happens is it's just going to trample a bunch of towns, and then eventually an adventuring party will come along and defeat it that isn't your adventuring party, and everyone knows that you're the guys that screwed up. Maybe, I don't know. Anywho, so regardless of whether or not your players are incentivized to do so, assuming that they do want to stop this thing, they need to find it first.
Which is no easy task.
Yeah, you'd think that finding a several story tall giant walking reptile, Dynadog. I think that's a good description.
So there's a druid on board that's been casting Pass Without a Trace on this massive beast, which is kind of funny in itself that you can even hide the tracks of something so large.
And there's a wizard that is casting Mind Blank or equivalent. Anyway, some spell that prevents scrying. I can't remember what the name of the spell is. So there's periods of the day where you can't scry to find it, and its trail disappears periodically because of the Pass Without a Trace that gets cast. So, yeah, that's a thing. Now,
I think like also this adventure assumes that you're like maybe it assumes that you're going to the big city at the end because like the map is pretty linear. Like there's a lake that it stops at. There's like a mountain pass that it walks through. So I don't know if it assumes that maybe you're traveling to that place for some reason.
If you know the topography,
Yeah.
I mean, you could just make them do like a geography check and figure that type of stuff out. I mean, players could just head directly to the next town and try to get ahead of it. Right?
And it does recommend doing that, trying to run ahead of the rampage.
Yeah, so they kind of know where it's going. They can try to track it down. So realistically, though, they probably want to go to the ruined town first and try to pick up the trail there.
Yep.
Where you can have there's a bugbear encounter by default. I don't know if I like that. I'd probably do more like looters or something like that. It just it's. I think it's good to have an encounter there. I'm not sure that's the right.
It's
encounter.
like a fight or a talk your way out of it. And the way written is that the bugbears know about this thing and they're just following in its wake, looting as they go.
Which is totally fine.
Yeah.
So you can find it in multiple ways. The one thing I did, this is going to tie into like the sort of getting on to the Cat in Act 2. The one thing I found kind of interesting throughout the entire adventure is that nowhere once does it talk about the players having flight. Right? Even though it's written for 6th level players, where regardless of the edition, you have flight. Like, how do you find the Cat in Act? You fly high and you look for it. Right? Like, how do you get on top of the Cat in Act? You cast fly and then you fly onto its back. Right? Like, how do we get up there? You cast invisibility and fly. Now, granted, there's a limited number of spell slots. Your wizard isn't going to, 4th edition, 5th edition, 3rd edition, doesn't really matter. Your wizard's not going to have enough spell slots at that level to fly everybody.
Yeah.
That being said, personally, I would downgrade the difficulty and run this for 4th level characters because then they don't have flight as an option at all. Yeah, because
getting on board this thing is...
It's half the fun.
Yeah. Mounting and just being on the thing is the heart of this adventure, for sure.
So I think it's less fun if someone can just fly up and then drop a rope down.
Yeah. Like, right? You want to be part of the environmental hazards that are going on. You want to have probably a combat encounter around the feet of this thing.
So you don't get squished.
Well, maybe, yeah. Or that's like fun, you know.
Well, flight just gets around a lot of the problems. Because as written, there's a couple of ways the players can get onto it without flight.
Yeah.
Which once again I thought was weird that there isn't just like you just fly on top of it right, like it's.
I didn't think of that when I was reading the adventure.
That's the first thing I'm like. They're level 6. Everyone's got fly. So
I was just like, this is impossible. How are we gonna get onto this thing? This is ridiculous. It's 100 feet tall. It's moving so fast. The feet are gonna kill you.
Well, literally the first thing I did, I'm like, how many spell slots, third level spell slots, does a wizard have at level 6? And I looked, I'm like, okay, it's 2, so you can't get everybody up there. But still, right? I kind of like not even having that as an option, because it definitely makes it more fun, and it's a pretty scalable adventure. Like it even provides suggestions on how to knock down or bring up the difficulty. So you just knock it down, run it for 4th level adventurers, and then it's definitely a lot more fun, quote unquote. Deadly, dangerous, exciting.
Deadly. Yeah, dangerous. It's dangerous. So the ways of getting on board. There, if you spend some time watching when it's standing still, it sleeps standing up because that was commanded to do so.
It's like a horse.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a winch that comes up and down of the kobolds doing stuff. So that's one way you could get on. Knolls. So that's one way you could get on board. It takes a bath at some point.
So you can swim.
So you could try and swim to it. And it passes through a massive crevasse at some point. So you could try and jump on top of it.
Honestly, that is the awesomest part. I just think if you're
like
playing
on your horses going and trying to jump on,
it's just running and then like jumping to try to get on top of the
Houdas. And you got to remember this thing is 100 feet tall.
So if you fall,
if they fail,
yeah, it's a 10d6
like
fall damage. And then you can climb up the legs. That's a thing. Like they're rough and you climbable,
but it's 100 feet, and you have to do a check every 10 feet.
Yeah, and if you fall, it's bad.
So there is the winch system. If you spend enough paying attention to it, there's like a whistle tune that they use, so you could mimic that. And
on top of which there's patrols that go around with wagons. So there's mounted gnolls, presumably, that do patrolling around it. There's tons of guard gnolls everywhere.
It's
like
a massive spotlight.
Yeah, there's magical spotlights.
There's magic mouth spells.
There's a fire hose. there's one of the coolest things I thought on there was that there's a decanter of endless water, which I'm not sure is even in 5th edition anymore. But you can command it to shoot a gout of water. So they use it like a riot hose to like spray the people. So if you're trying to climb up and you get shot, they can try to spray you off with the water. There's Ballista that can shoot at you.
It's very well fortified.
If you come from the front, you can get tangled by spider webs or petrified. So really, your players cannot just run right at this thing or they're just all going to die, which is why I think the knights encounter is there to warn the players not to do what they did or you will die.
Yeah, because if you end up in a fight around the feet of this thing, you have to do a dexterity check to see if you're able to dodge out of the way of a stomping foot every time.
Yeah, the best part about the stomping feet, which I loved, was that like the difficulty DC to evade getting squashed depends on whether or not you're paying attention to the feet.
Yeah.
And if you pay attention to the feet,
-2 on all your attack rolls.
You take a minus in attack rolls, but if you were doing this in 5th edition, I would just say you have disadvantage.
Yeah.
Right? So you can take disadvantage on everything, or just hope you don't get squashed.
That doesn't even prevent the fact that you might not even guarantee the fact that you're out of the way of getting squashed.
No,
it just lowers the difficulty.
You can still fail the difficulty,
and it's like
immediate
instant death if it steps on you.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, you're not. Regardless of your level, you're not going to survive. You're going to get destroyed. I mean, this obviously becomes a lot easier if someone has flight, which is why I would run it for lower level pieces, just because I think it's more fun. That being said, if you have a wizard and they haven't really gotten to do anything fun in a while, then yes, you can let them be the hero by letting them fly up. That, it's not trivial whatsoever, right? For the wizard to even get up there without getting shot by a million arrows and all of that stuff, you'd probably want to cast.
Like, what level is polymorph?
Oh, it's much higher than that. It's not third. It's like fourth or fifth level. I mean, we could pull out the player's handbook, but I don't really remember. So it's much higher than. I mean, if you have a druid. I mean, on the other hand, if you have a druid, it's just they're going to turn into a bird and fly up there, right? So, and that's a second level thing.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you necessarily want to penalize them that much. Just getting on there.
You don't get to turn into flying creatures until a much higher level.
Oh,
8th or 6th?
Oh, yeah, you're right. So
you can only do like amphibious creatures at level 2.
You can turn into a squirrel, and you can get climbing.
Yeah, a mouse or something. And,
so you make your life easier. So what you do is you shape change into a mouse, and they tie you onto an arrow, and then you shoot the arrow.
Squee!
I'd allow it. A sling, just a mouse in a sling. Oh no! So you get a wizard who has a familiar, and then you shapeshift into a mouse, and then the familiar eats you. Takes you up there. There's ways of getting around it, but I think I probably just run it with flight, done with a rough flight. I think it becomes a more difficult but more interesting adventure if the players don't have flight.
Yeah.
So
it would just be fun to watch them fail.
Well, there's a limited time frame, but there's plenty of time to plan.
Yeah.
So I think this is where the planning to get on it seems like the fun part, or stop it, or trap it, or like let's dig a big pit. You know, like there's lots of things.
Let's dig a big pit.
There's options of things that you could consider
just
doing.
got this vision in my head of like the adventurers on horseback just watching it trample the city that they're supposed to stop to get into, and just been like, just failing at every attempt to mount this thing. It was like, well, all right.
Well, I think it even mentions in the adventure that if that happens, it just goes to the next village, right? Like it just keeps going and destroying another one and another one. So like they can kind of not save the one village and then do save the village. Now, I do think that if you have the idea of there's a a prisoner who's going to get eaten, there's a certain level of what's the word I'm looking? Urgency to get on there, because especially if they keep failing, and then by the time they get there, they're the person they're trying to rescue has been eaten. Then
what's the point?
I'm okay with that, actually. I mean, it's a good opportunity to show that like that the players have agency. You know, like that if it takes too long to do something, bad things happen. So I don't know. I think it's kind of fun. Now, getting on its back is not even half the battle. Like it's literally the beginning of the battle.
Once you're on it, like you're bombarded by rolls, having to even be able to stay on your feet.
Well, if it's moving, there's just balance checks. There's also traps everywhere.
Yeah.
Which is actually what I think would be kind of hilarious is you can get all the way up there and then trigger a grease trap, fail your save, slide off, and fall 100 feet to the ground. So there's grease traps basically on all the edges of everything.
Yeah, I like the random motion table where you roll and see what it's doing.
Yeah, because everything's moving and rolling.
And if it gets commanded to run, then you're even at a more at a disadvantage.
There's black tentacles, so you can get grappled. There's magic mouth spells. I think you mentioned that already. Everywhere, that's screaming warnings. And there's knoll guards everywhere. Like there's tons of enemies in these quote unquote dungeons. They're all super low level, right? Like they're not designed to take. Like what's kind of cool about this is the enemies are low enough level that if you were stealthy, like I could definitely see like a pair of rogues like stealth killing all of the guards. Right? I don't know if you can just do it with one.
Yeah, a couple.
Because I think there's some places where there's like 2 guards. But I could definitely see like going around like assassinating people and having maybe an archer shooting the other ones. Like you could definitely do a lot of this reasonably sneaky, because if you don't, like basically you chain pull the entire thing and you end up fighting tons of archers, like tons.
So there is like a reason for this thing to be trampling around, though. The Hjord. Like the
the bad guy,
the Hjord. So I guess there was like
this is my least favorite part of the
adventure. So it's like I don't know, like
it's an opposite alignment hound archon.
Yeah, so
it's ridiculous.
There was a good one, and then a bad one got made through some mirror of whatever.
Mirror of opposite alignment.
Yeah.
It made an evil twin.
Did the wizard make the evil twin? I think she made it, right?
No. It was he was created by this artifact, right? Like the good Archon was trying to defeat. the Wizard's Master or something like that. I can't remember exactly. Anyways,
yeah.
some sort of interaction with a wizard who had a mirror of opposite alignment, which once again, it's an older artifact. I'm not sure if it's in 5th edition rules yet. But basically, if you look in it, it creates a doppelganger of the opposite alignment of the person who looked in it. So your lawful good Hound Archon looked in it, and it created a chaotic evil Hjord.
So he's like he's the big bad in all this, and there's a wizard present.
Yeah,
so it's not like mindless.
Oh no, it's basically the Hjord. He wants the good Hound Arc, the good twin was tasked with defending the area, so he's the opposite. So Hjord wants to destroy the area, and he found out about this through reasons. Anyways, there's a wizard. Her old master was working on this artifact to summon this extraplanar creature from one of the Beastlands or whatever.
Yeah.
The initial plan, though, was just to use it for merchant. Like, they wanted to create a merchant caravan.
That's right.
So the original thing was like benign. So you have this giant thing that's got like a trader town on its back, and you just move around. But Hjord got the wizard to finish the artifact. They summoned it. They created this. Because he looks doggish, he's convinced a band of gnolls that he's an avatar of whatever the
dog.
I can't remember. It's the demon patron of Yuggoth, or I can't remember what the name of the hyena god thingy demon is, but that's how he convinced them to work for him.
Yep.
So they think they're on a divine mission, and he's just like wants to mess things up.
So it's all pretty fun, like comical-ish.
No, it's comical,
but
that's the reason for this all happening is a faintly ridiculous.
Yeah.
But you should be concerned because Hound Archons are rough. And no pun intended, I guess. But yeah, like their abilities are pretty painful to deal with, and we'll talk about it in a second. But so you get on top of here. Let's assume you get onto the platforms. Let's assume you avoid most of the traps and all of that stuff there. One specific thing I wanted to mention, which was awesome, is that there's an animated ballista. So there's 3 ballistas set up or 4 ballistas set up on the back. So those are an issue if you're trying to approach it. But you finally get on there, you're attacking the ballista shooters, the gnolls, and one of the ballista is also an animated object, and it just like charges you and tries to knock you off. So
there's lots of funny things on this.
I got a big kick out of that.
So the Hudas are like the huts that are on the back of this.
Yeah, there's wooden towers and stuff like that. Yeah, I'll tie it back on there.
And there's a bunch of little mini encounters once you're on there. I liked the druid encounter that you get into, and how he's bonded a plant as opposed to
the assassin vine that's in his druid pod.
Yeah, he doesn't have an animal companion. He's got a plant companion.
Assassin vines are pretty rough, and they can basically you'll animate an entire garden full of plants, and all of them are going to try to kill your party, which is kind of awesome. I do agree with that. I thought that was pretty cool. One thing I would try to force on your party is that this should probably be like one assault. You know what I mean? Like if you use hit and run tactics, this actually isn't that hard, right? Like, so theoretically, there's nothing. This is where flight becomes sort of problematic. So you cast flight on your archer, and they just fly around and just kill a gnoll, and then you run away.
Yeah.
And then they kill another gnoll, and then you run away. And then you kill another gnoll. Like if you keep doing it that way, like, this is where once again, like having the hostage prisoner might encourage, a more robust assault.
I mean, I think if a party decided to use hit and run tactics, the people in charge would just make it run.
Yeah. I mean, there's alternatives that you could use to it, but if you're 3rd level, just go up and the range of a fireball it's ridiculous, right? So just like I shoot a fireball, right? That's my spell for the day. We come back in 8 hours. Shoot another fireball, right? Like because the enemies, there's a lot of like minions, and the minions don't have a lot of health. Yeah. So dropping a fireball might kill a whole platform, like everybody who's outside.
True.
Right? So that's that was my only thing while reading this is like, if you just use hit and run, I mean, and if you're totally fine with that, like it's a totally viable tactic. It'll make for kind of a boring adventure.
I feel like if the beast got a fireball shot at it, it would turn and run in the direction of the people there, and then they automatically all have to make a dex save as it runs past them.
It'll run away
Squish
from
them.
it. Like, I don't. It depends how well it's aimed and stuff like that. I mean, as a DM, there's lots of things that you could do to encourage it. But if your players don't really care too much about saving the town,
Right.
and like there's lots of things that might not encourage them to be responsible about their approach to it, if you will. And a lot of those issues get rectified by
There's something there that they want.
if there's someone alive on it. You know, that they could be putting into harm's way with these hit and run tactics.
True.
I mean, and once again, like, I don't really care so much if they raid it and rescue the person, and then flee after that and say, like, good luck with your lives, people. But like, at least then that is a more memorable encounter than like just shooting the Catanak with arrows from a distance until it dies. You know, it has a bajillion hit points, but theoretically possible. You could just pew 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 until it until it dies. So what else is on there? So there's a bunch of like these places. There's nothing super riveting about most of them. I did like that there was a gargoyle, right? Like, so that was one of the things that I thought there could have been more of, is flying monsters. I think one of the suggestions, if you want to ramp up the difficulty to it, is to have wyverns on there. And I think that is a reasonable modification if you are running with higher level players that have flight, or lots of flights, or flying like objects. If you randomly give a medium level party a flying carpet, you know, and have to deal with the consequences of that, all it takes is a bunch of gargoyles, harpies, or another reasonably low level flying monster, wyverns, some sort of things in the air, especially if they can see in the dark, would eliminate the ease of using that. Like, it still becomes a viable tactic to fly on there, but if you're dealing with flying versus flying, then it's less of a easy win, if you will.
Have the wizard dispel the flight midair.
That is an option. That's cruel.
I feel like you're forgetting about the craziest part about this whole thing. The curse that's in it.
You're going to have to remind me. What's the curse?
They're like, if you loot I think it's a chest or maybe the spell book of one of the Hjord or the wizard, there's a curse that you get where you see people inside of your eyes, and it's -6 to your charisma.
I totally missed that. That is amazing.
Yeah. It was like, I can't remember the name of the curse, but yeah, you get -6 charisma. And you like see people in your retinas. So like you can see people as you're looking out of your own eyes.
So you're like looking at a blank wall and you see people just standing there?
Like, no, they're like in your eye is how it was described in the adventure.
So it's like people walking around in your eyes?
I guess so.
So it's just like the shadows of people in your vision?
I suppose so, yeah.
Why would that affect your charisma?
I don't know. You're crazy.
Again, people see people walking in your eyes?
I don't know the whole... I was reading it. Sounded awesome.
That is awesome. That's an amazing curse. No, I must have read over that. It's hilarious. But sorry, go ahead.
Just going to move on to the encounter with the wizard.
Yeah. I kind of lump both of them together, the wizard and Hjord.
So the wizard that's there, she doesn't really have an investment in this. She will flee or barter. Silkess.
I wrote her name down.
Silkess the wizard. So she's negotiable and agreeable to just leave, really.
Oh yeah, no, I totally think she'd bail.
Yeah,
like immediately.
Like this is
as soon as they start losing, she's gonna just leave. She's got, I think she's got fly and invisibility,
and she's got teleportation circles all over this place that she uses to get around.
Oh yeah,
like she just bounce.
There's literally no way that this wizard fights as soon as you start to lose.
Yeah.
So fly and invisibility. So if things go wrong, she's like, I'm going out the window.
Yeah, see you guys.
Grab her stuff. I mean, other than like the fact that she's got some very heavy, very expensive gear that she might be a little sad about leaving. But yeah, there's no reason for her to die here. That was the other thing I was considering too with Hjord. because he's got greater teleport at will.
Yep.
Once again, like no way the PC should defeat him, right? He can teleport around the Howdah. He should only be attacking with range.
Yep.
Right? There's no way realistically the players can catch him if he doesn't want to be caught. And I can't see any reason why he would want to be caught.
Yep.
So when I see this, I see him more as a long-term foe
Yep.
for the rest of the campaign, unless the players like make a dedicated attempt to hunt them down. I personally think it would be funny if later on they run into his doppelganger, the good one, and maybe mistaken, because they have no idea that he's an opposite alignment
they wouldn't
magical creation.
Yeah.
So if they encounter the
Start
real
attacking the good
Fjord,
one.
right, and then you could parlay that into them trying to track down the evil twin together or something like that.
Or how confusing would it be if like the good Fjord was in the refugee camps helping, if he somehow was around, and then when they get on to the beast, they realize that he's also there doing the same thing.
That's something you could do. I just would love at some points to have an encounter, like the classic encounter where you have them fighting and the PCs don't know which one's the real one.
I'm the good one. No,
Yes.
I'm the good one.
Remember that time I helped you? No, that was me. You know, like you could definitely have one of those situations where he's the evil twin, I'm the good one, right? Like
you get into the room and they're both near death. And you have
Yeah.
to make the decision. Shoot him!
Yeah.
No, shoot him!
Yeah. It's an opportunity for a classic a trope. So I'd be hard pressed not to want to create that situation at some point. And realistically, there's no way that the PC should defeat them, right? Like, and for winning the adventure, for accomplishing their goals, they don't need to.
Yeah.
So they're both gonna. I think the wizard and the Archon should escape. I don't know that the wizard cares enough to maybe ever come after you again. I could see the Archon being really angry about it and wanting to be a recurring villain. So yeah, I think they should escape through the I mean, kind of my issue is like there's nothing that explicitly explains how it's being controlled and how you would stop it from being controlled. Like at some point the PCs will come across a gnoll that's wearing a fancy helmet.
Yeah.
That if you destroy said fancy helmet, it breaks the enchantment and the creature will return back to the beast lands.
If you choose to wear the helmet and control the beast, you eventually will get this sense that it's in pain and doesn't want to be controlled. But yeah, I guess you wouldn't. I mean, maybe you could do some kind of Arcana check to maybe figure out how like a
there could be
item like
there
that
could be
might
paperwork
work.
in the wizards. There could be letters. We're a big fan of letters. It's plot
like
points.
a owner's manual for
Exactly.
Do not return to the supplier if you need to service this.
Congratulations on buying your
manufacturer.
first Catanak. What you need to know for first-time users. You could build in something like that.
You should let your PCs track this thing by the mountains of dung that it leaves around.
Yeah. Should eat something important and they gotta...
Yeah, Jurassic Park style.
Jurassic Park
Why is
style.
this thing sick?
Yeah. That would be kind of funny. I think they should escape. And once they're gone, like without the Hound Archon and the Wizard, there's no real other major threats on there. The Gargoyle's got class levels, I believe, so he might be kind of tricky, but he'll bail if the other ones bail. And then after that, it's kind of a mop-up game.
The Cobalt, they'd probably just leave.
Well, the Gnolls will
leave.
probably start to potentially abandon it, and they're not. The Gnolls aren't the real danger, anyways. The Gnolls are dangerous in aggregate. So the fact that they're there and can sound an alarm and recruit reinforcements and all, individually they're not scary, but each of them shooting arrows at you adds up, right? They're a resource drain more than anything else. But there's a few other things in there. Like you find that they've tied up a basilisk and a giant spider to use as siege weapons.
It's all very creative.
It's all very, very creative. So that you can just dispatch them, right? Like
Yeah.
the basilisk can't stone you. It's tied up. It's emaciated. You don't even get experience points for killing it because it's really
Poor
quick
little
drawing
guy.
it. Same thing with the spider.
And if you choose not to deal with any of these things, the Cadnac, once it's free, it shakes everything off of its back, murdering everything that was on board anyway.
As long as you take the helmet and
Yeah.
leave, it'll regain its senses, and then you just have a giant creature wandering around aimlessly.
It slowly dissipates back to its realm.
Only if you destroy the helmet.
Yeah.
If you don't destroy the helmet, it'll stay there. It just will wander around under its own free will, which is fine. Now, the one thing that I thought more than anything else is we need to see this in battle, right? Like, I think that the PCs need to witness it, like actually destroying the town. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, from a descriptive standpoint, or even like alternatively watching, if they witness the knights get attacked instead of hearing about the knights getting attacked, that might be, I could see that being more fun. Like, it's a giant siege engine,
Yeah.
and as is, we only hear a description of how awesome it is.
See it in action.
So to see it in action, I think there'd be merit to that.
Pacific Rim style.
Yeah, watching it just destroy things would be super cool. I mean, there's a wizard casting spells and then it just gets stomped on or something like that. Like I would do this completely narratively and descriptively for fun, but to really impress upon your players like how terrifyingly dangerous it is, damaging it is. I think that would be more fun. And the easiest way to do it is they get to witness the knight's attack, right? That doesn't change anything else. But you could obviously let them do whatever, especially if they're kind of procrastinating about it. They can watch a town get destroyed or
that'd be awesome.
Or something get destroyed. I just think that would be a lot more fun. Alternatively, you could also have them trying to defend the town, so it's being attacked and they're part of like a counterattack to defend it. So instead of them encountering refugees and tracking it down, they could be in the town, or they've been hired to help defend the town from this, and then you have it there and you have it sieging, and then you're going to try to stop it. You could do it that way too, which would be kind of fun, or them coming across the town being attacked, and then you got to get in there. Like, it changes the dynamic a little bit, but I think as is, that's the one thing that's super missing about the adventure is seeing all of this in action. Right.
Yeah, and I definitely think for whatever reason, like, I don't let your players get on this thing when it's sleeping. Like, I would want them to be on it in the daytime when it's traveling. Yeah. Because then they're like constantly rolling these like random movement things, and like they're trying to sneak up on something, but then they have to roll to see if they stumble out of the way. That's what
it's a much more exciting. Well, that's what I think
is exciting about this whole adventure is that like you're on the back of this thing. It's like not that exciting if like you climb up onto the sleeping beast and it just hangs out, like, or you startle, the sense of haste and it starts running and you have to, have all these failures and things. And it's like, that's what makes this cool, is that you're on the back of a monster, not the fact that you're just like assaulting a town.
Yeah. I mean, and that might just be sort of pointing out things that are problematic with it, right? Like, we're talking about, like, this is super awesome if this doesn't happen and if that doesn't happen. And to a certain extent, like, I'm fine with limiting players' options a little bit, but I don't know if you want to punish your players that are like, oh, well, we should do this if this is, we punish your players for planning it appropriately, right? Like, you can set up a situation where that isn't an option, right? But if it is an option, I don't think you can limit your players once they've decided that course.
Well, and like once the Fjord finds out that they're there, if the PCs haven't managed to make it to the knoll that's controlling this thing first, the first thing he should do is just teleport to the helmet and grab it and put it on himself. And then teleport back, go to them, and have this thing go into a sprint straight towards the city that it wants to destroy.
Yeah, that would be pretty cool. I mean, that's always an option too.
Right? Like, this is his weapon. He's not going to abandon it.
No.
And you could never catch him.
Yep.
Like he could just teleport anywhere he wanted and just
just teleport like in the distance.
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
Like, just still
just
directed
wait.
that way.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's totally reasonable. But man, would that just be too aggravating for your players?
Maybe. Depends how like large scale you want this, or what do you equip the big, like, is it a city that it's going after? Is it a large settlement? Is it a castle? How well is it defended? Does it know it's coming? Have they already prepared for something? Like the Griffin cavalry comes in, like, is it,
Well, I think if they have a Griffin cavalry, you don't really need to be involved.
No, but like
this.
maybe if it gets to that point where it's like sprinting towards the thing, you can have like this final epic showdown, like you were saying, of it destroying the city and,
Yeah, I mean, I think you could build it for that, but I think, I don't know, I'm a little hesitant about, say, having Hjord taking the helmet and wearing it and then teleporting away, which totally, don't get me wrong, like, is absolutely reasonable and what he should be doing, but man, that's kind of an unsatisfying conclusion to it. Like, you're creating an unwinnable situation, which fair enough happens.
But that I'm sort of solved by your problem of having something there that they're after in the first place, right? If they came and if you came and rescued the person that was supposed to be there, it's like consolation that you got rid of the beast.
Well, yeah, I guess you could...
Or motivation to continue going after it, or...
You could just have a follow-up adventure, basically, or you just don't let them... Or they are not the ones who stop it, right?
Yeah.
Like, they rescue the person, or maybe that could be the thing, is it's a suicide mission, and then, they have to rescue the guy before the Griffin cavalry come with their wands of fireballs and destroy the whole thing.
Right? Like you need to rescue. If you don't rescue it by the time you get to you can put a timer on the timer, right? Like
it's packed with explosives and he's charging towards the town.
Well, yeah, you're not supposed to stop the town from being destroyed. Whereas like you need to rescue your thing before the Hjord and its creatures destroyed by whatever.
I mean, I guess that's an option. That's a little dark, maybe. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the best way in the end would be to do it. I mean, the whole thing too is like it's an extraplanar creature, so it just goes back to its home plane when it's defeated, right? Like it's, from my understanding, it's called, right? That's the rules for summoning. So I don't know how attached he is. Like I don't know if this is the only Kadanak, and if it dies and he still has a helmet, can you just get another one? Like I can't remember if it specifically says that, because if this isn't the only Kadanak you can get, then that changes the dynamic. And that actually might be kind of interesting, is if it's like this giant attack against, like, it's an attack that's kind of designed to fail, but he's never, like, it's sort of like testing the defenses, and then he can still escape with the helmet, and it can happen again later.
Then you have to find the good Hjord and then summon another Kadanak, and then the good Kadanak battles the bad Kadanak.
That might be a bit much, but I think there's room in this that if Hjord escapes with the helmet, even if the Kadanak is dispelled, it could return later with like a more intense setup. It's the Iron Fortress on its back or something like that, or some other permutation of it, right? Like this could be the Kadanak Mark 1.
MK1.
Yeah, and that's...
MK2 comes back next year.
Right, and well, that's the thing, is it could just be recurring as long as Hjord keeps getting away with his helmet. The Kadanak comes back with like more improvements as he makes up for the flaws in the earlier designs. It's theoretically possible. And might be enough. Like, I mean, coming back one other time might be enough to motivate the PCs to actually just track him down.
Want to finish him?
To stop this threat.
But you can teleport at will.
There's what Dimensional Anchor, and there's spells that can inhibit that, but you need to get to the level where you have access to it. And until the PCs have access to those types of magic, they can't stop them. Is the issue. So that's why he can work as a recurring villain that you can eventually stop, because you can make the preparations for that particular, all his tricks. Right. So then you can do it, or maybe you can track down the real blah blah blah
Hjord.
the real, I don't know if I can't remember if his doppelganger has the same name or not. It's probably his name backwards or whatever. It's Yord or whatever. But that might be the case. So maybe they have to track him down and find out that, you know, I don't know. The opposite alignment stuff is odd. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think recurring villain is the way to go, and I think you could run the adventure as is and be completely satisfied with it. I would be completely satisfied with it as is. The only thing that I think is kind of a quote-unquote must is either cash money incentive, or what I'm more of a fan of is the rescue mission.
Yeah.
Because with the rescue mission, like you said, they can totally just get in there, rescue, and just bail. Like there's less reason to just clear out the whole thing, especially if they're having a rough time out.
Yeah.
Right, because this isn't a dungeon where you can be like, okay, we're gonna camp now.
Yeah, there's no camping. It's an in and out. It's a one-shot deal.
Yeah, you get it all done, or you leave and then you come back again. And I think if you have to leave and come back again, that's maybe where Hjord has set his mind on, like, we're just gonna rampage.
Yeah. He'd be prepared. You knew people were messing with them. Yeah.
Yeah, because you'd know, like, and that would probably be like my response to a hit and run is then he's just gonna beeline directly full bore straight into the town before these people can come back to stop you. And then if you want to stop, then you're suddenly back in the situation where it's just running full out and all of this craziness is happening. So you could have it both ways without messing with things too much. Anyways, I think I'm just starting to repeat myself at this point.
Yeah, so, I got nothing more to say. Great adventure, room for lots of creativity and
lots of fun. I would definitely check it out if it sounds like something you'd be interested in.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks, guys.